Hi everyone, in this video we are going to explain the chapter 3 exercises from 7 to 11 of interdependence and the gains from trade. This is the book of Gregory Mankiw, which is called Principles of Economics. So first question, the seventh question says, England and Scotland both produce scones and sweaters. Suppose that an English worker, here is an English worker can produce 50 scones per hour and 1 sweater per hour. Suppose that a Scottish worker can produce 40 scones per hour or 3 sweaters per hour. A. Which country has the absolute advantage in the production of each good? Which country has the comparative advantage? So here I summarize all the information in this table. These are the hours needed to make 1 unit of scones and 1 unit of sweater. So in this case, we know that an English worker, he spends 1 hour for a sweater, but in 1 hour he can produce 50 scones. So it means that the hours needed to make 1 unit of scone is 1 over 50. And the other side, we know that in is 2 hours, 2 sweaters, two sweaters per hour. This is the Scottish. So it means that for 1 unit of sweater, the Scottish worker needs half an hour. On the other side, he produces 40 scones per hour, so it means that 1 over 40 hours needed to make 1 unit of scone. So in this case, we see here how the absolute advantage in scones is made by England because the price is lower. And the other case is sweaters is Scotland because they have smaller price for sweaters, smaller opportunity cost. So there is the absolute advantage. After, we have to see about the opportunity cost in order to find the comparative advantage. So in this case, we know that the price of 1 scone is like in the time that they have 1 scone, they can English people or English worker, he can fabricate or he can produce just 1 over 50 of sweater. For 1 sweater, the English worker, he can produce 50 scones. On the other side, the Scottish worker, for 1 scone, remember that once 1 scone he can produce 1 over 50 sweater. Why? Because it's 2 sweaters per hour, and in the same time they produce 40, so it's 2 over 40, which means 1 over 20 of sweater, and 1 sweater is equivalent to 20 scones. So the comparative advantage is again the smaller one is this one, so scones for England and sweaters for Scotland. So the next question, if England and Scotland decide to trade, which commodity will Scotland trade to England? Explain. So again, remember that the trade is going to be based on the comparative advantage of the country. In this case, Scotland will trade scones and he will give sweaters, okay, sweaters. So in the other side, the comparative advantage is going to be, so this one is going to be the case. So he will give sweaters, and the other side, the England will trade the sweaters and he will give scones. Okay, so the C point, if a Scottish could produce only 1 sweater per hour, would Scotland still gain from trade? Would Scotland still gain from trade? Explain. So here we have the hours needed to make 1 unit of. Okay, this is the opportunity cost. We have changed here. Remember here it was 1 hour, 2 hours. Now it's 1 hour. Okay, so this is now how it has changed, because now Scottish worker needs just 1 hour to make 1 unit of sweaters instead of 2 hours. So in this case, the opportunity cost is going to change, because it's going to be 1/40 and it's going to be 40 scones. So Scotland still will gain, because in spite of the loss of productivity, they can still they have still comparative advantage in sweaters. We see here in the sweater how the Scotland opportunity cost is lower than the England opportunity cost. And England still gain, because they have comparative advantage in scones, and they will get sweaters cheaper than the price they can produce them. They can produce the sweater for 50 scones, and they are going to trade for a price which is lower than these 50 scones. The 8th point. Consider once again the farmer and rancher discussed in the chapter. A. Suppose that a technological advance makes the farmer better at producing meat, so that he now needs only 2 hours to produce 1 pound of meat. What is his opportunity cost of meat and potatoes now? Does this alter his comparative advantage? So we have here the first table, which we had before, okay, which is the previous case, what we resumed. So we have the summary: hours needed to make 1 pound of an amount produced in 40 hours. And now with technological advance, here with bold, this is the change. Now they have 2 hours. They are necessary to have 1 pound of meat. On the other side, they have like 20 pounds of meat if they produce just meat during these 40 hours. So here, his opportunity cost of meat and potatoes now, does this alter his comparative advantage? So here it was the previous case, was the opportunity cost, and now with the technological advance, this was like the opportunity cost of meat is really lower, because we have now, instead of 2 pounds potatoes, is the opportunity cost of 1 pound of meat. Now the opportunity cost of 1 pound of meat is just 1/5 pounds potatoes. On the other side, 1 pound of potato, the opportunity cost is 5 pounds of meat. So in this case, there is still the same comparative advantage for meat by rancher. We see here the price is lower, and here is still the price lower for the farmer, and so still the comparative advantage is the same. So is the deal that the rancher proposes, 3 pounds of meat for 1 pound of potatoes, still good for the farmer? Well, if we have this like rate of change, 3 pounds for potatoes, so in this case, this is not a deal, because the opportunity cost has changed. The farmer has to receive more than 5 pounds, because now this is the cost. If he like receive just 3 pounds of meat, he's losing, because this price is smaller. Okay, so now he needs at least 5 pounds of meat for 1 pound of potatoes. Okay, so propose a deal to which the farmer and rancher might agree now. So here we have the farmer's production possibility frontier, which is measured in meat pounds and potatoes in pounds as well. We have here, if they devote all resources to the production of potatoes, they will have 4. And the other case, if they devote all his resources to meat, they're going to have 20. So here is the initial point, right, where it is the middle, 10 and 2. This is the initial point. And here is not A star, this is going to be the last one. Sorry, this is A. I don't know why it doesn't appear. This is the rancher's production possibility function. We have here the potatoes and the meat. We have here the maximum quantity of potatoes the rancher can produce is 5, and the other side is 40 for the meat. So we have here the other point. So how I propose the agreement? So I propose that the farmer can produce just potatoes, where is the comparative advantage, and he can trade 2 potatoes, in this case he still will consume 2, for 11 pounds of meat. So he will have 2 potatoes, so the same quantity, but 1 pound of meat more. Okay, so this is gonna be better for him. What about the rancher? So we have to figure out which about the quantities of the rancher. So what we have for the rancher is the next case. So here the rancher, this is again the point, and what I propose is this part. Okay, what I propose here. First, I'm going to take, this is going to be the last result, the B star, where the rancher is going to be better. But how I take these numbers? So I have first, this is the possibility production frontier, which I just need 2 pair of points 5, 0 and 0, 0, 40. So this one is x1 and y1, and this one is x2 and y2. This is the function of slope, which is the numerator, the change in y, and the denominator change in x. So we just replace our values, and we have that our slope is -8. After we have this equation, and we know that when x is 0, the function is going to cut in 40. So we have b is 40. So now we have this equation, which is the equation of the production possibilities frontier. So now what I propose that the rancher, she's going to receive 2, right? So I'm going to propose that the rancher, she's going to produce just 1 potato. So if she produces 1 potato and 2 pounds of potato that she will receive, she will have at the end 3. So I'm going just to replace for x1, which is going to be the production, y, how much or how many is the quantity of meat. So in this case is replacing 1, so it's going to be this y is going to be the production of the rancher. But remember that the rancher is going to give 11 to the farmer. So in this case, the rancher will produce 1 pound of potatoes and 32 pounds of meat. She will receive 2 pounds of potatoes. Instead, she will give 11 pounds of meat. So now, because she receives 2 pounds of potato plus 1 of her production, she's going to have 3, and she's going to have 32 less 11 that she's going to give to the farmer. At the end, she's going to have 21. So we see a point where both are better off. 9. The following table describes the production possibilities of 2 cities in the country of Pennsylvania. So here we have 2 cities, Boston and Chicago. The pairs of red rocks per worker per hour is 3. Okay, and the pair of white socks per worker per hour is 3 again. Chicago is 2 and 1. Okay, so the question is, without trade, what is the price of white socks in terms of red socks in Boston, and what is the price in Chicago? So in Boston, the price of 1 white sock is 1 red sock, because they produce the same quantity per hour. In Chicago, the price of 1 white sock is half of red sock, because red sock they produce 2 in 1 hour. So in the meantime that I just produced 1, I'm just like having 1/2 of red sock. So now, which city has an absolute advantage in the production of each color sock? Which city has a comparative advantage in the production of each color sock? So here again we have the table. So we see here the absolute advantage is about Boston, and Boston has an absolute advantage in both goods, Why? Because they can produce 3 in 1 hour instead of 2, and here they can produce 3 again, and against the Chicago they just can produce 1. So they have absolute advantage in both goods. So in order to find out the comparative advantage, we have to think more about the opportunity cost. So we see here that one pair of Red Sox, it costs one pair of White Sox because they have the same level of production. But the other side, they have 1.5 for Chicago because one pair of Red Sox, in the meantime, they can just produce 1.5 pair of White Sox. Here, for the one pair of White Sox, Boston has one pair of Red Sox because they're similar. In the other side, we have for each pair of White Sox, they can produce 2 of Red Sox. Now, having the opportunity cost, we know, well, we have now Boston has a comparative advantage in White Sox. Okay, White Sox because it's lower, but Chicago has a comparative advantage instead Red Sox because it's smaller. So here, that's it. C is the cities. If the cities trade with each other, which color sock will each export? So given again the comparative advantage, remember that the country with the comparative advantage is going to produce this good more than the other. So given this comparative advantage, Boston will trade White Sox and Chicago will trade Red Sox. What is the range of prices at which trade can occur? So again, I have here the opportunity cost, which at the end is like the price of the good. So here we know that for the Red Sox, the price oscillates in this. So it goes to the lower, who has the comparative advantage, which is this one, until the higher price, which is the price of the other good. So here I put in parentheses because it's open, so maybe the range is from these to these. Okay, so in the other case for the White Sox, this is going to be the lower price, which is going to be 1, and the maximum price, which is going to be 2. And suppose that all goods can be produced with fewer workers' hours in Germany than in France. In what sense is the cost of all goods lower in Germany than in France? So the cost of all goods lower than France in absolute advantage. Remember that absolute advantage is like how much time take in order to produce one good. We know that because Germany is more productive, so they have in all goods they can produce everything with like high productivity. So this is the comparative absolute advantage. In what sense is the cost of some goods lower in France? So in this case now we are talking more about comparative advantage because even France has less absolute advantage. Some goods are produced with a less opportunity cost. What does it mean? It means that in some goods they have a price lower than even the country which has a higher absolute comparative absolute advantage. So here, if Germany and France traded with each other, would both countries be better off as a result? Yes, absolutely. They are going to be better off because, as we saw before, even if the countries there is one country that has absolute advantage in each good, when you make the opportunity cost is the inverse. So maybe also that's gonna be a fact. So afterwards you will see how the comparative cost for some goods they're going to be better or cheaper in France because of the opportunity cost. So the 11th and last one, are the following statements true or false? Explain in each case. The first sentence says, two countries can achieve gains from trade even if one of the countries has an absolute advantage in the production of goods, of all goods. True, actually we saw the case of England and Scotland where there was one with an absolute advantage in all goods, but even that even that they can trade and they can face positive gains. The B. Certain very talented people have a comparative advantage in everything they do. This is false, because even the people they have a great talent in different activities, once they compare one activity with other one, they will face or they will find that there are other people with less compared opportunity cost. So as we saw before, there was a professor which is the best writing and the best gathering data, but even that he hired one guy to find the data, because he knows that the opportunity cost of finding the data is so high, because at the same time he can do the other information. The last point is C. If a certain trade is good for one person, it can't be good for the other one. Was false. What we saw throughout the chapter is that when we offer a trade, we are like we are arriving to a point which was unreachable before in the production possibility frontier. So this is false, because due to the comparative advantage, each country, each part can specialize in what they do more. The let's say they do the best. So in this sense, everyone is going to be better off. So that's pretty much the exercises. I hope it has worth and great success with economics, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.